Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? Sarah Martinez had been in rooms like this before, rooms filled with men who measured her not by her record, not by her scars, but by her gender. But this one felt sharper, heavier, maybe because it was her first day. Maybe because she had thought, foolishly, that civilian life would be different. The morning had started quietly. She had woken before dawn. Nerves twisting in her stomach the same way they had the night before her first deployment. She had polished her shoes until the black leather reflected the dim glow of her apartment lamp. Her portfolio, lined with certificates and military commendations, rested on the passenger seat as she drove into the city. Titan Security Consulting. It sounded important, modern, a fresh start. She'd been told it was the best private security firm in the region. The kind of place where her military background would mean something, where she could turn years of field work into a second career. But the receptionist's face told her otherwise. The woman's eyes had swept over her pressed suit, her tight bun, the leather portfolio she held like armor. Orientation? She had asked, the smile a little too practiced, the tone a little too surprised. By the time the team leader arrived an hour late, Sarah had already learned that this world was no different. Jake Morrison, broad shoulders, fading gray at the temples, a handshake that lingered too long and squeezed too tight. The kind of man who thought a first impression was a battlefield. Sarah Martinez. She'd introduced herself evenly, holding his gaze. "We'll see how you fit in." He'd replied with a chuckle that carried something sharper beneath it. This isn't exactly women's work. His men had laughed with him. Sarah felt it then, the old burn in her chest. The same one from basic training when drill instructors had said she'd wash out. The same one from patrol briefings where senior officers looked past her, not at her. That burn had carried her through every mission, every fight, every impossible night in the dust of Afghanistan. And now it was back. Here, in a carpeted office with polished walls and a coffee machine humming in the background. She swallowed it down. She had become very good at that. Then the radio crackled. A sharp voice filled the room, shattering the pretense of orientation. "All units, code red. Hostage situation at First National Bank. Armed suspect, multiple hostages. Repeat, this is not a drill." The shift was immediate. Chairs scraped. Gear was pulled from lockers. The laughter disappeared. Sarah watched as the men strapped on tactical vests. Their movements practiced, efficient. Years of habit snapped into place. Jake tossed her a reflective vest, bright yellow. The word security plastered across it in black. "Stay close, sweetheart. Don't get in the way." The burn in her chest twisted harder, but she slipped the vest on, climbed into the back of the SUV, and let the city blur past as sirens wailed. 15 minutes later, the SUV screeched to a halt in front of the bank. Sarah's eyes locked on the building. 1940s limestone facade. High windows, classic architecture, but her training wasn't admiring. It was calculating. Entry points, angles of fire, blind corners, escape routes, chaos unfolded outside. Police had formed a perimeter. Red and blue lights flashing across the glass. News vans lined the sidewalks. Civilians pushed against the barriers. Phones raised, recording. Jake barked orders. "Martinez, crowd control. Keep the reporters back, think. You can handle that?" Her jaw clenched. She'd handled far worse than restless journalists. She'd rebuilt bridges in enemy territory. She'd neutralized IEDs while gunfire cracked overhead. But this wasn't the time. She nodded and moved from her position. She could see everything. Jake and his men clustered with the police commander. Heads bent, voices tight. Through her earpiece, the tactical briefing unfolded. The suspect, Marcus Webb, 34, armed with a semi-automatic rifle, 12 hostages, no clear demands, communication erratic. Sarah listened, heart tightening. The patterns were familiar. She had heard voices like his before, in the dust of Kandahar, in villages where men spoke. Of betrayal, loss, abandonment. His rambling monologues weren't just the words of a criminal. They were the words of a man unraveling. She looked at the building again. Limestone, renovations. Something tugged at her memory. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through public records. Blueprints, old construction notes, and then she saw it. 1947, service tunnels. A hidden system beneath the bank, running to the adjacent buildings. Her pulse quickened. An entry point, a way inside. A chance to avoid the bloodbath she felt tightening around the edges of this standoff. She moved toward Jake, trying to cut into the flow of chatter. I found something about the building. There's a tunnel system that... Not now. Martinez, he snapped, eyes never leaving the SWAT commander beside him, a dismissive wave of his hand cut her off like she was static on the radio. She waited, tried again later. Jake, if we use the service tunnels, we might. Sweetheart, he interrupted again, this time louder, more condescending. Let us handle the tactics. You just keep those reporters back. This is real police work, not whatever course you took to get here. Tommy and Rick smirked. The burn in Sarah's chest flared into fire, but she bit down on her tongue, swallowed the heat, and turned back. Toward the crowd, the black Cobra tattoo coiled beneath her sleeve pulsed against her skin. She could almost feel it breathe, a reminder of where she had come from. The 36th Engineer Brigade. 3 tours. Kandahar, Helmand, Kuner. It wasn't ink. It was survival carved into her flesh. 2 hours passed, the tension thickened. Marcus's voice over the comms grew sharper, less coherent. A man sliding into psychological freefall. SWAT commander gave the order. Breach in 15 minutes. Sarah froze. Her chest tightened with the knowledge of what was coming. A frontal assault, a dozen hostages, a desperate man with a rifle. It was the kind of math she had seen before, the kind that ended with body bags. She keyed her radio, voice steady but urgent. Jake, we need to reconsider his psychological profile suggests. Martinez, Jake snapped, irritation crackling through the earpiece. Stay off the tactical channel, crowd control, remember. Professional, that was the word he had used earlier. Professional. Sarah thought of the IEDs she had defused, the bridges she had rebuilt under fire, the soldiers she had carried bleeding through enemy lines. She thought of the 3 bronze stars collecting dust in a shoebox. Her phone buzzed, a message from Miguel, her younger brother. Saw you on the news. Mom's worried, but proud. Stay safe, Hermana. The words hit her harder than the radio chatter. Her family was watching her shoved aside, ignored, underestimated. Watching men with half her scars decide the fate of 12 strangers. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. Sometimes, doing the right thing means disobeying orders. 10 minutes to breach. Sarah moved, quietly, smoothly. Years of urban combat had taught her how to slip through chaos unnoticed. The police perimeter was focused forward. Reporters screamed questions. Civilians craned for a glimpse. No one saw her disappear down a side alley. The tunnel entrance was there, hidden behind a dumpster, exactly where the blueprints had promised her. Fingers worked the lock with tools she carried out of habit. A quiet click. A heavy grate creaked open. The smell of dust and rusted iron drifted up. She slipped inside. Darkness swallowed her. The tunnel was narrow, lined with pipes and old cables. She crouched, crawled, moved forward with her flashlight beam cutting thin slices through the dust. Every breath echoed, every scrape of her boot whispered against stone. Her watch ticked. 8 minutes to breach. The passages forked, twisted. Twice she took wrong turns. Twice she doubled back. Sweat beaded along her hairline. She thought of the caves in Afghanistan, the suffocating earth, the way every sound carried. Finally, a ladder, a vertical shaft. The old boiler room above. She climbed. Muscles remembered. The rungs were cold, slick with condensation. Her heart thudded in her ears. The basement was alive with the hum of machines, the smell of oil, dust, and time. She moved carefully between hulking heating units. Above her, faint voices bled through the floorboards, Marcus shouting, hostages crying. 3 minutes to breach. Her sleeve caught on an exposed pipe. A sharp tear. She froze. The sound echoed. No reaction above. She exhaled slowly. Didn't notice the fabric sliding away from her forearm, exposing black ink that glistened faintly in the dim light. She reached the stairwell, stood at the door. Her hand rested against the knob. She could hear him, Marcus Webb. His voice cracked, filled with despair. 2 minutes. She inhaled, exhaled, pushed the door open, and stepped into the lion's den. The hostages were huddled on the polished marble. Fear etched across their faces. Marcus stood near them, rifle twitching, sweat pouring down his temples. His eyes snapped to her instantly. Who the hell are you? He shouted, voice breaking. The weapon swung toward her, trembling in his hands. Stay back. I'll shoot. Sarah's hands lifted, palms empty, body still. She had been here before, dozens of times. The difference between life and death was not in the weapon, but in the man holding it. Her voice was calm, soft. Easy, Marcus, my name is Sarah. I'm not here to hurt you. His eyes darted, fear, confusion, rage. How do you know my name? Because she had been listening, because she had understood, because she had seen herself in his unraveling words, and because the black Cobra tattoo on her forearm, now revealed in the torn sleeve, was about to change everything. What made him stop? It wasn't the words. It wasn't her calm voice or her steady posture. It was something else, something flickering in Marcus Webb's wide, frantic eyes. He had seen it, the black ink winding down her exposed forearm. The rifle in his grip shook violently, barrel twitching between her chest and the hostages behind her. His finger hovered dangerously close to the trigger, tendons straining, sweat rolling down his cheek. That tattoo, he muttered hoarsely, eyes narrowing. That's military. I know that ink. Sarah's pulse thudded in her ears. The room was carved out of silence and fear. Every breath from the hostages seemed loud enough to shatter the moment. She had seconds, just seconds before. SWAT breach. She rolled her sleeve higher, slow, deliberate, exposing the coiled serpent in full. Black scales etched with detail. A cobra mid-strike, hood spread, fangs bared. The mark of the 36th Engineer Brigade, earned in dust, blood, and fire. 3 tours, Sarah said softly, her voice steady but laced with memory. Kandahar, Helmand, Kuna Province. Marcus froze. His knuckles whitened on the rifle, but his aim dipped just enough to breathe. I built bridges under fire, Sarah continued, her eyes never leaving his. Cleared IED supply lines. Stayed open. Watched friends die in the sand for reasons I still can't explain. The room seemed to close in around them. The terrified hostages. The marble floor slick with fear. The fluorescent lights humming above it all, blurred into the space between Sarah and Marcus. You were over there? He asked, voice cracking, disbelief breaking through his fury. 8 years active duty. Sarah replied. Her throat tightened, but she forced the words out. And I came home to a world that didn't know what to do with me. A world that thanked me for my service, then told me I didn't belong. Marcus's breathing hitched. His rifle trembled, barrel dipping another inch. Behind Sarah, the earpiece she had discarded on the marble floor hissed faintly. Jake's frantic voice crackled through. 30 seconds to breach. Stand by. Sarah ignored it. She couldn't let them in. Not yet. Marcus's eyes darted to the tattoo again. Recognition flickered. I knew guys with that ink. Combat engineers. Good men. Tough men. Not just men, Sarah said gently. People who carried weight no one else could see. He swallowed hard, sweat dripping from his chin. The rifle lowered a fraction more. They promised me work when I got back. Marcus said suddenly, his words tumbling fast, broken. Said, "My experience mattered. Security, construction, anything. But every interview was the same. Overqualified, wrong background. Too much." His voice cracked, raw with despair. "My girlfriend left. Said I wasn't the same man anymore. She was right. I'm not. None of us are." His hand trembled violently. For a terrifying heartbeat, Sarah thought the rifle would. Discharged by accident, she took a step forward, slow, controlled. "Marcus, I know what that feels like. I know what it's like to carry something home that nobody understands. To look normal on the outside, but inside." She swallowed. "Inside, you're still over there. Every night, every sound, every silence." His lips quivered. His eyes glossed over for a moment. Marcus wasn't looking at her. He was looking through her into some desert memory, some ambush, some moment that had never ended. The hostages shifted, barely breathing. Sarah caught the terrified gaze of a father shielding his teenage daughter. She gave the smallest nod. "Stay still. Trust me." Outside, boots pounded pavement. Red sniper dots flickered against the windows. 15 seconds. "Marcus," Sarah said urgently, voice cutting through his spiral. "This isn't the way. These people," she gestured carefully to the hostages, "they're not the ones who failed you. They're just scared. Like you. Like me." His chest heaved. The rifle wavered lower, then jerked back up again. "If I walk out, they'll put me in prison. My life's over." "Maybe," Sarah admitted. The word hung heavy. "But theirs won't be." She gestured again, softer this time. "That girl gets to grow up. That woman gets to see her family again. That man gets to go home tonight. That matters, Marcus. It has to matter. Or everything we went through over there was meaningless." The word meaningless broke him. His face crumpled, lips trembling. He whispered it back, like a confession. "Meaningless." 10 seconds. Sarah extended her hand slowly, palm open, steady, a soldier's hand. Not pleading, not demanding. Just there. "Let me help you end this the right way," she said quietly. "We don't get to fix everything, but today, right now, you get to choose how this story ends." Marcus stared at her hand. His rifle sagged. The tattoo on her arm caught the harsh light above. Scales glistening like something alive. A symbol of survival, of sacrifice, of belonging. 4. One stretched, eternal heartbeat. Sarah thought he would snap, that the weight of everything would collapse inward and take the hostages with it. Then, slowly, Marcus lowered the rifle. The barrel clattered softly against the marble floor. His base. Hands trembled as he let it go, his body shaking as though the weapon had been the only thing holding him upright. The room exhaled. Hostages whimpered, sobbed, clutched each other, outside. The SWAT team's countdown ended in a thunder of boots. The breach. The door exploded inward. Shouts filled the air. "Down! Down!" Rifles leveled at Marcus, sniper. Dots locked on his chest. Sarah threw herself between them. Arms out, body squared. "Stand down," she shouted, her voice sharp, commanding. "Weapons down. Suspect is surrendering." Chaos rippled through the team. Voices overlapping, orders shouted. For a moment, no one knew who to obey. Then the sight of Marcus, kneeling on the marble with empty hands, stilled the room. SWAT swarmed, cuffing him. Quickly, dragging him aside. But Sarah's eyes stayed on him, on the broken man who had just chosen, for the first time in years, not to pull the trigger. And Marcus looked back at her. Not at SWAT, not at Jake, who stormed in pale and furious, but at her, at the tattoo on her arm. A whisper escaped his lips, barely audible through the chaos. "You saw me." Sarah's chest tightened. She nodded once, just once. Then he was gone, swallowed by the team. Hauled toward the flashing lights outside. The hostages spilled into police arms. Paramedics rushed in. Reporters shouted over barricades. Cameras flashed. And in the center of it all, Sarah stood silently, sleeve torn, tattoo visible, chest heaving. With the weight of what had almost happened, Jake stormed up to her, face flushed with anger. "Where the hell were you? You disappeared. Do you realize what could have?" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw her arm. The ink, the Cobra, the unmistakable insignia. Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of doubt, maybe respect, maybe fear. But Sarah didn't look at him. Her eyes were on the floor where Marcus had laid his rifle down, the decision made in the space between them. Outside, sirens wailed. The world already spun with headlines, and Sarah Martinez, the woman who had been dismissed as crowd control, knew everything had changed, not just for her, for everyone who had ever been underestimated. Why did the cameras turn on her? Sarah hadn't noticed them at first. She had been too focused on the trembling hostages. The SWAT team's rifles still trained, the ringing in her ears from the breach. But once the smoke cleared, once Marcus Webb was pulled to his feet in handcuffs, the cameras were everywhere. Every angle of the rescue had been captured. Reporters pressed against barricades, bystanders live streaming police body cams, even the grainy bank security footage. And in all of them, one detail stood out. The torn sleeve, the black Cobra tattoo. Sarah tried to fade back into the crowd, but the spotlight followed her. Civilians clapped, shouted her name, called her a hero. She wanted to shake her head, to tell them they had no idea what heroism cost, that it wasn't something you celebrated. It was something you carried, quietly, alone. But before she could retreat, Jake appeared. His face was red, jaw tight, voice low enough to sting but not carry. "You disobeyed direct orders," he hissed. "You went rogue. You could have gotten people killed." Sarah met his glare evenly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she said, softly but firmly, "But I didn't." His lips tightened. He had no reply within 24 hours. The footage was everywhere. The news cycle spun with headlines. Female veteran saves hostages. The black Cobra tattoo. Clips replayed her slipping into the bank, her calm voice coaxing Marcus to surrender the moment his weapon hit the marble. What the world saw wasn't just a security consultant. They saw a soldier, a veteran, a woman who had faced a man unraveling and chosen compassion over firepower. Social media erupted. Hashtags trended. Hashtag Black Cobra Tattoo. Hashtag She Saved Them. Veterans shared their own stories in threads beneath her name, stories of rejection, of invisible scars, of being dismissed by employers, neighbors, families. For Sarah, it was disorienting. She had woken the next morning to dozens of messages, old comrades, strangers. Her brother Miguel, even her mother, who never texted, "We're proud of you. Everyone saw what you did." But the truth weighed heavier than the praise. She knew how close it had come, how fragile that line was between life and death. One slip, one wrong word, one half-second of hesitation, and the story would have ended in screams and gunfire. She carried that knowledge like a stone in her chest. At Titan Security, the fallout was immediate. The office buzzed like a hive. Phones rang non-stop. Clients called in. Reporters left messages. Everyone wanted to know about the woman with the Cobra tattoo. Jake avoided her. His men, Tommy, Rick, Dave, stole glances but said little. The laughter that had greeted her on her first day was gone, replaced by silence heavy with unspoken questions. On Thursday morning, the CEO called an emergency meeting. Patricia Riss, sharp suit, sharper eyes, a woman who had built Titan's empire on precision and profit. Sarah sat at the long conference table, portfolio closed in front of her. She wasn't used to boardrooms. The polished wood, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the skyline glittering beyond it, felt distant, unreal. Patricia slid a folder across the table. "Effective immediately, you are being promoted to senior tactical consultant," she said, without preamble. "Your salary is being doubled. You'll lead our new crisis response division." Sarah blinked, words caught in her throat. She opened the folder. The contract inside represented more money than she had ever seen. But it wasn't the numbers that struck her. It was the title. Senior Tactical Consultant, not trainee, not assistant, not diversity hire. Patricia's voice cut through her thoughts. Jake will be transitioning to work under your supervision. The air in the room shifted. Jake stiffened. His jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Sarah looked at him briefly. The same man who had dismissed her, ignored her warnings, shoved her to the sidelines, now under her. The irony was almost cruel, but she didn't smile. She didn't gloat. War had taught her humility, the futility of victory laps. Leadership wasn't about payback. It was about responsibility. And suddenly, she carried more than ever. Patricia continued. Our biggest client, Meridian Corporation, has specifically requested your team for their executive protection detail. Their CEO has been receiving credible threats. They want our best. That means you. The words settled heavily on Sarah. Meridian, high profile, dangerous, and now it was her job to prepare for it. As the meeting adjourned, Jake rose quickly, avoiding her eyes. The others followed, their silence thick. Sarah lingered. Her hand brushed against the edge of the folder. She should have felt triumphant, vindicated, but instead, she felt hollow. Her father's voice came back to her. Sometimes the right thing means disobeying orders. Had she done the right thing? Yes, but at what cost? Marcus was in custody, facing years behind bars, a man broken by the same system that had nearly broken her. She had stopped a tragedy, but she hadn't saved him. Not really. That night, alone in her apartment. Sarah turned off the television mid-broadcast when her face appeared again. She poured herself a glass of water, stared at the reflection in the dark window. The city glowed below, alive with energy, but her own reflection looked tired, haunted. Her phone buzzed. A message. Marcus Webb, Veterans Facility. Her hand trembled as she opened it. Saw you on the news. Thank you for seeing me as a person that day. Getting better every day. She stared at the words. For the first time in days, her chest eased, just slightly. Maybe she hadn't saved him completely, but maybe she had given him something to hold on to. She typed back slowly. Keep fighting, brother. We're all in this together. She set the phone down, looked at her arm. The tattoo caught the faint city light. The Cobra seemed alive again, scales glistening, hood spread wide. It wasn't just a mark of her past anymore. It was a symbol of what came next. What if the first mission under her command ended in failure? That thought stalked Sarah as she stood before the glass tower of Meridian headquarters. It gleamed against the Chicago skyline like a blade, sharp and cold. A monument to wealth, power, and controversy. Robert Meridian, billionaire, visionary, exploiter, some said. His company had grown from a garage startup into a tech empire, but its labor practices had made him enemies. Not just disgruntled ex-employees, extremist groups. Activists, radicals who believed his empire had been built on exploitation. And now, credible death threats shadowed his every move. Titan Security had been called in to protect him, not just Titan Sarah. The CEO had specifically requested her. The black Cobra tattoo had become her signature. And that scared her. She hadn't asked for the attention. The headlines, the viral clips, she hadn't asked to be a symbol. But in this line of work, reputation was leverage, and now her name carried weight she wasn't sure she wanted. As she studied the building's architecture, her mind shifted to the work itself. Sniper angles, access points, weaknesses in the glass facade, routes in and out. She cataloged them with military precision, her instincts clicking into place. Behind her, Jake and the others waited. They were quiet, too quiet. 6 months ago, they had mocked her. Now, they followed her, reluctantly. Maybe, but still they followed. All right, Sarah said finally. Turning to them, let's go to work. Inside, the building pulsed with activity. Employees in sharp suits moved through security checkpoints. The air smelled of coffee, electronics, and fresh polish. Everything about the space was designed to impress, to intimidate, but Sarah didn't see polish. She saw flaws, cameras with blind spots, guard rotations that left gaps, a lobby that funneled visitors into a choke point without proper screening. She spoke quietly to Jake as they walked. Note the mezzanine, too much open visibility if someone wanted to take a shot at the lobby. That's the place. Jake nodded curtly, jotting notes. His face was stiff, but his eyes had changed. Less doubt, more respect. Hours bled into days. Sarah led her team through every scenario she could. Imagine car bombs, active shooters, coordinated assault teams, even insider threats. Her training manuals were her scars. Every mistake she had lived through in Afghanistan, every friend she had buried, was now a lesson she refused to repeat. The first test came during Meridian's keynote speech at a technology conference. Thousands filled the hall, cameras lined the walls. The stage was set for spectacle and danger. Sarah's team deployed early. Jake and Rick focused on the obvious threats. A disgruntled ex-employee flagged at the entrance. A group of protesters outside. But Sarah's instincts pulled her elsewhere. She had learned long ago that danger didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered. She noticed him backstage, a catering worker who moved wrong. His posture too rigid, his eyes scanning the stage, not the trays. His hands lingered on the serving cart, not the food. Sarah's pulse ticked faster. She moved closer, her steps casual, her voice low. "Hey, which catering team are you with?" The man froze. His answer was too slow, too rehearsed. She stepped closer. His jacket shifted. A bulge beneath the fabric. Her hand shot out, gripping his wrist, twisting it hard. The tray clattered to the floor. Gasps rippled around them. The man fought, eyes wide, but Sarah's strength was practiced, brutal. She forced him to the ground, ripping his jacket open. The weapon glinted beneath the lights for a heartbeat. Silence, then shouts. Security swarmed. Cameras flashed. Jake rushed in, eyes wide, and through it all, Sarah stayed steady, kneeling with one knee pressed into the man's back, her Cobra tattoo visible as her sleeve slipped again. The image was captured from every angle. Her steady grip, the would-be assassin restrained, the black Cobra ink glistening under the stage lights. Within hours, it was on every news channel. She saved him again. The Cobra strikes twice. But Sarah didn't feel like a savior. Later, alone in the quiet of her hotel room, she sat on the bed and let the silence wash over her. The adrenaline faded, replaced by something heavier. She thought of Marcus Webb in his cell. She thought of the assassin's eyes, wide with desperation, not much different from Marcus's. She thought of the cyclemen broken by systems too large, too indifferent. She pressed her palms against her eyes. How many times can I stop it before I break too? Her phone buzzed. A message. Miguel. Saw the video. You okay? Her chest ached. She typed back. I'm fine. Just tired. But she wasn't fine. Not really. She stood, walking to the mirror. Her reflection stared back, strong, unyielding. But her eyes told the truth. Tired, haunted, carrying too much. Her sleeve slid down, revealing the Cobra again. For the world, it was a symbol of strength. For her, it was a reminder of survival, and survival came with a cost. How do you rebuild trust in a place that never gave it to you? That was the question Sarah asked herself every time she walked the halls of Titan Security now. 6 months had passed since the bank rescue, 3 since Meridian, and everything had changed. The company that had once seen her as an outsider now revolved around her. Clients called specifically for her team. Reporters requested her name for interviews. Magazines asked her to speak on panels about crisis leadership. The black Cobra tattoo had become more than ink. It was a brand, a symbol, a rallying point for veterans who had spent too long in silence. But with visibility came responsibility, and responsibility came with weight. Sarah refused to build her division on the same arrogance she had once faced. Instead, she went looking for people like her, people with scars, visible and invisible, people the system had overlooked. Her phone became a lifeline to old comrades. Messages went out quietly. No recruiters, no job boards. Just calls in the night. You still looking for work? You still fighting to belong? Come here. We need you. They came, one by one. They filled her office. A medic who had stitched wounds under fire. A communications officer who had kept a unit alive through broken radios. A demolitions expert with hands steady enough to disarm nightmares. Half of them were veterans, half of them women. None of them had been first choice anywhere else. All of them understood what it meant to carry weight. The change was slow, subtle, but undeniable. The atmosphere in the briefing room shifted. Conversations sharpened, smirks faded. Even Jake, once her sharpest critic, began to listen more than he spoke. He didn't say it outright, not at first. But his silence was different now. Less dismissive, more reflective. Then, one afternoon during a training exercise, it happened. Sarah had just finished running the team through a breach scenario non-lethal. Staged, but tense enough to mirror reality. The exercise had gone sideways halfway through. One of the rookies panicked. The timing collapsed. Sarah paused the drill, stepping in. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't belittle anyone. She broke it down, step by step. She showed them where fear had taken over, how to reset, how to steady. The rookie nodded, embarrassed but grateful. The team reset, ran it again. This time, it was clean. Jake pulled her aside afterward. His face was hard, but his voice was quiet. You've got away with them, he admitted. Better than I ever did. Sarah blinked. For a moment, she thought he was mocking her, but his eyes held something else, something uncharacteristic. Respect. I misjudged you, he added after a long pause. Back at the start, I learned something from that. His gaze dropped briefly, then rose again. Experience doesn't always look the way you expect it to. Sarah didn't answer right away. Words pressed against her chest, but she swallowed them. She only nodded. A small acknowledgement, not forgiveness, not yet, but something. That night, she sat alone in her office, the city stretching out beyond the window. The desk was covered in files, case studies, threat assessments, client proposals, but her eyes kept drifting to the framed photo propped against the corner. Her old unit in Afghanistan. Faces she hadn't seen in years. Some still alive, some gone, all of them part of her. She thought about the path she had walked since then, from dust and fire to polished boardrooms, from being dismissed as crowd control to leading a division, from being ignored to being watched by millions. And through it all, the same quiet question haunted her. Am I leading for them or for me? Her phone buzzed. Another message, another reminder. This time from a woman she didn't know. A veteran in Texas. I saw your story. The tattoo. The way you stood your ground. I've been turned away from every security job I've applied to. They said I wasn't the right fit. Thank you for proving we belong. Thank you for making me try again. Sarah read it 3 times. Her chest tightened. She typed back slowly. Keep going. The fight doesn't end when the war does. She set the phone down, looked again at the photo of her unit, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe deeply. Not because the weight had lessened, it hadn't, but because she wasn't carrying it alone anymore. When did her story stop being hers? That question pressed on Sarah as she stood in the echoing marble halls of the U.S. Capitol. Cameras flashed as she walked, escorted by aides in suits, her black Cobra tattoo visible beneath a rolled sleeve. Reporters shouted questions, their voices bouncing off the high ceilings. Do you think companies discriminate against veterans? Do you believe women face unique challenges in security work? Do you think the system is failing those who served? Sarah said nothing. She saved her words for the committee, but inside, the unease grew. She hadn't asked to be here. She hadn't wanted to be a headline or a hashtag. She had only wanted to do her job. But after the bank rescue, after Meridian, after the viral images of her tattoo, silence was no longer an option. The chamber filled with senators, staffers, and cameras. She took her seat at the witness table, a nameplate in front of her, a microphone angled toward her, her hands folded. On the polished surface, when the questioning began, she felt the old burn in her chest, the one from basic training, the one from that first day at Titan. "Ms. Martinez," a senator began, voice measured. "We've read about your record, we've seen the footage. But in your view, what is the greatest challenge veterans face when they return home?" Sarah paused. The silence stretched. She thought of Marcus Webb in his cell. She thought of Miguel's texts. She thought of her own sleepless nights. "The hardest part," she said finally, "is not the war itself. It's the return. It's realizing that the world you fought for has no place for you in it." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Cameras clicked faster. She continued. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It carried the weight of lived truth. "You come home. Trained, disciplined, experienced. But employers don't see that. They see risk. They see baggage. They see someone who doesn't fit the mold. And for women veterans, it's doubled. We're overlooked, underestimated, and sometimes dismissed before we open our mouths." Her throat tightened. She took a breath. And the result? We lose people, not on the battlefield, but here, at home, to despair, to silence, to being forgotten. The room stilled. In that silence, Sarah remembered Marcus again, his shaking hands, his broken voice, the way he whispered, "You saw me." Senator leaned forward. "And what do you believe needs to change?" Sarah looked around the room. Politicians, staffers, reporters, all waiting for her to provide an answer that could fit neatly into a headline. But she hadn't come to give them comfort. "We need to stop treating veterans as broken," she said. Quietly, "We are not liabilities. We are assets. We don't need pity. We need opportunity. We don't need speeches. We need a chance to keep serving, to keep mattering." The words hung in the chamber, heavy, uncomfortable, true. When the hearing ended, Sarah walked out into the swarm of cameras again. Flashes blinded her. Questions flew like bullets. But what stayed with her wasn't the press. It was the handshakes from veterans waiting in the corridor, the quiet nods, the whispered thank yous. That night, back in her hotel room, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, her jacket draped over a chair. The city lights flickered beyond the window. Her phone buzzed nonstop. News clips, tweets, headlines, veteran speaks truth to Congress, the Cobra at the Capitol. She turned the phone face down. The silence pressed in. She rubbed her forearm where the tattoo wound around her skin. Once, it had been just for her unit, just a mark of belonging among the few who had survived. Now it belonged to strangers, to a movement, to a cause she hadn't chosen, her chest. Ached with the weight of it, Miguel called. His voice was warm, teasing. "You looked like a general in there, Hermana," Mom cried. She made me replay it twice. Sarah laughed softly, but it was hollow. "I'm not a general, Miguel. I'm just tired." "You're more than that," he said firmly. "You're hope. People need that. Hope." The word cut sharper than he intended, because hope was heavy after the call. Sarah lay awake staring at the ceiling. Memories returned unbidden dust. Storms, distant explosions, the sound of boots on gravel, the silence after a firefight when the world held its breath. Now, the firefight was gone, but the silence still held her. She whispered into the dark, as if to her old unit, as if to herself. "How much longer can I carry this?" No answer came, just the faint hum of the city below. But when she finally closed her eyes, one thought steadied her. If she didn't carry it, someone else would have to, someone less ready, someone who might not survive it. And so, for one more day, she would hold it, because sometimes Dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did they come to her now? Sarah asked herself that question as she stood in front of a classroom filled with women in uniform. Some were just out of service. Some were still enlisted, preparing to transition. All of them were staring at her, as if she had the answers. The lecture hall smelled faintly of chalk and coffee. A flag hung at the back of the room, still and heavy. Sarah adjusted the sleeve of her jacket. The Cobra tattoo visible by choice this time. "No more hiding. I'm not here as a hero," she began. Her voice was calm, even. "I'm here because I know what it feels like to walk into a job interview and be dismissed before you sit down. I know what it feels like to have your experience questioned, your competence doubted, your silence mistaken for weakness." A murmur rippled through the room. Heads nodded. Sarah paused, scanning their faces. Young, determined, anxious, she remembered. Being them sitting in classrooms, wondering if she would ever belong. "That's why I started this fund." She continued, "The Cobra Scholarship. It's for women like you. For veterans who refuse to stop serving, who just need someone to believe in them." Applause filled the room. It wasn't loud, but it was steady, grateful afterward. They came to her one by one, shaking her hand, sharing fragments of their stories. A medic who couldn't get hired because her trauma made employers nervous. A logistics officer told she was too intense. A sniper dismissed as not what the company was looking for. Sarah listened to each. She offered words where she could, silence where it mattered more. Later, as the room emptied, she lingered. Alone, the silence pressed in again. She sat at the edge of the podium, staring at the empty seats. Was this what her life had become? Not just surviving, but carrying others too. Her phone buzzed. A message from Patricia. Titan CEO. "Press wants an interview about the scholarship." National magazine. Cover story. Sarah sighed. The spotlight never dimmed. Back at Titan, her division had grown into something she hadn't expected. 12 specialists now, half of them veterans she had recruited personally. The atmosphere was sharper, steadier. Mistakes were owned, not mocked. Silence wasn't dismissal. It was listening. And Jake. Jake had changed too, not overnight, but slowly, reluctantly. He still carried himself with the swagger of a man used to being in charge. But the edge of arrogance had dulled. He asked questions now. He waited for answers one evening after a long day of drills. Sarah called the team together. They gathered in the briefing room, sweat still clinging to their clothes. Notebooks open, Jake stood abruptly. His hands were clasped behind his back, his face tight. "I want to say something," he began, voice lower than usual. The room quieted. He looked at Sarah, then at the team. "When Sarah joined, I didn't treat her with respect," he admitted. "I thought I knew what experience looked like. I thought leadership came in one shape. One voice, one face. I was wrong." The words landed heavily. Jake cleared his throat, his jaw flexing as if the admission cost him. "I learned something from Sarah," he continued. "I learned that experience doesn't always look the way you expect it to. And if you're not careful, you miss the person in the room who's most qualified." "I did, and I won't make that mistake again." Silence, then quiet nods around the room. Sarah said nothing. She didn't need to. The acknowledgement wasn't for her. It was for them. For the rookies, the veterans, the ones still learning what leadership looked like. After the meeting, Jake lingered as the others filed out. He approached her. His voice was rough, almost uncomfortable. "Look, I know an apology doesn't change the past, but I respect you more than I've respected anyone in a long time." Sarah studied him. For months, she had waited for this moment, but now that it came, it didn't feel like vindication. It felt like closure. Respect isn't words. "Jake," she said quietly, "it's action." He nodded once. "Then I'll show it." That night, Sarah sat in her office, the city lights stretching out beyond the glass. The scholarship paperwork lay on her desk. Beside it, a growing stack. of client proposals, speaking invitations, and press requests. She reached for the photo of her old unit again. Their faces stared back at her, dusty, sunburned, tired, but alive. Together, she touched the frame lightly. "We're still fighting," she whispered. "Just different battles." Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Miguel. Mom saw the scholarship announcement. She cried again. "She says you're changing things for people like you." Sarah smiled faintly, typing back. "Tell her it's not just me. It's all of us." She set the phone down, leaning back in her chair. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe. The weight hadn't lifted. It never would. But it had shifted, because now she wasn't carrying it alone. When does the fight finally end? Sarah asked herself that question often, in boardrooms, on late-night drives home. In the quiet moments when the city hushed and only her thoughts remained, she knew the truth. Of course, the fight never ends. It only changes shape. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when she sat in her corner office at Titan Security. The space still felt strange, too polished. Too high above the streets, floor-to-ceiling windows looked out across the skyline. Beyond them, the bank where everything had changed was just visible in the distance. Her desk was cluttered with case files, proposals, training schedules. The scholarship applications were stacked neatly in a folder at the side. A framed photo of her old unit leaned against her computer monitor. She rubbed her temples, exhaustion settling into her bones. 6 months of non-stop movement missions, speeches, interviews. Rebuilding Titan had left her tired in a way combat never had. Her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, but the name stopped her. Marcus Webb. Her chest tightened as she opened the message. "Saw you on the news again. Thank you for seeing me as a person that day. Getting better every day." Sarah stared at the words. She let out a slow breath, shoulders sinking. For weeks, she had wondered what became of him. She had feared the system would chew him up, discard him the way it had discarded so many others. But he was still here, still fighting, her eyes blurred. She typed back carefully. "Keep fighting the good fight, brother. We're all in this together." She set the phone down, looked again at the photo of her unit, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled. Not wide, not showy, just soft, real. The company hummed outside her office. Her team, once dismissive, now loyal, moved with quiet purpose. Jake's voice echoed faintly down the hall, steady and respectful. The new recruits, half of them veterans, half of them women trained with focus and discipline. The atmosphere was different now. Sharper, kinder, stronger. Sarah leaned back in her chair, watching them through the glass. They didn't know she was listening. They didn't know she was smiling. For a moment, she let herself imagine the future. Not headlines, not Congress hearings, not viral footage. Just work. Just service. Just the steady rhythm of people protecting people. Her gaze drifted down to her arm. The black Cobra tattoo caught the afternoon light. Its scale shimmered faintly, coiled and ready. It was no longer just a mark of where she had been. No longer just survival inked into flesh. It was a symbol of where she was going. Because survival was not the end. It was the beginning. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Miguel. "Mom says she wants you home for Sunday dinner. She made your favorite. She says the Cobra can take a day off." Sarah laughed quietly to herself. A rare, unguarded laugh. She typed back, "Tell her the Cobra will be there." She looked out at the skyline once more. The city pulsed with life, sirens in the distance, lights flickering on as the sun dipped lower. A world still fractured, still dangerous, still in need of protection, but also a world worth protecting. Sarah Martinez closed the file on her desk, stood, and rolled her sleeve higher. The Cobra stretched along her arm, alive in the fading light. For years, she had fought to be seen. For years, she had carried the weight alone. Now, at last, she understood. Sometimes, dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts, and in that quiet truth, Sarah found her peace.